family studies, Daria Dugina as a role model, and operating drones. And no more mobile phones. For those for the first time on my channel, my name is Zach the Russian. I'm 23 years old Russian who left Russia because of the war against Ukraine, and today we'll talk about Russian school system. The new school year, as is now traditional, began with a conversation about important things lesson, which took place on September 2nd after the assembly with an anthem and the flag raising ceremony. This lesson, Conversations about Important Things, is a new subject that Putin introduced into the school curriculum after the war in Ukraine began. At the very beginning of the introduction of the subject, students were told why fighting against Ukraine is good, about NATO expansion, and other points from Russian propaganda. On September 9, the first lesson dedicated to the 120 years anniversary of TASS will take place. Do we have anyone smart who would guess what TASS actually stands for? Well, it's Telegraph Agency of the Soviet Union, and yes, it is still called that way. Anyway, so the students will be told the history of this information agency, and they will be told that this is a source of reliable information about Russia for the entire world. And of course, by fake news, the Russian government means any information that contradicts the state's narrative. But not all parents are brainwashed, because according to a recent survey by All Russian Public Opinion Research Center, Russians consider Conversations about Important Things lesson one of the most useless school subjects. In that survey, less than 5% of respondents stated its importance. As in some Western countries there is a subject called gender studies, Russia came up with its analog, with its answer to evil satanic West, with the subject they called family studies. It was proposed by Nina Ostanina, the head of the family committee of the State Duma, and yes, they literally have a family committee in the parliament. Nina Ostanina actually stated this summer that the law of domestic violence should not be passed. And for those who aren't aware, that in 2017 Russia basically decriminalized domestic violence against, quote, close relatives, and began treating it as an administrative offense, so it's like a misdemeanor basically. Moreover, in family studies, students will be taught that being gay is wrong, having sex before marriage is a sin, and that one should marry immediately after finishing school. Special attention in the program is given to having many children. In particular, students will be taught that having many children is, quotes, an important component of a healthy family atmosphere. And they will also learn about social support measures for large families and the role of the family in solving the demographic problems of modern Russia. Well, I'm not surprised they actually start teaching this in schools, considering how many men Putin is losing at the front lines. But beyond that, Russia also has a very low birth rates. In 2021, the birth rate was only 1.49, which is even lower than in the United States, which is 1.66. I actually have a whole video about how Putin is planning to make a boom in the demographics in Russia and raise more soldiers for future wars. The Ministry of Education even noted that physics or chemistry might have to be sacrificed for the sake of this new course. In family studies, students will be taught about the process of marriage registration, family budget planning, male and female roles in the family, the pros and cons of young families with children living together with their parents, children's pocket money, loans and saving for the families, maternity capital, mortgages, and more. In the final lesson, students will analyze the website of the Commissioner for Children's Rights under the President of Russia. In addition to the promotion of traditional values, extracurricular activities will also include militarism propaganda. Starting from the new school year, 523 schools and 30 vocational training centers will launch educational programs focused on the development, production, and operation of drones. All institutions involved in the project will have training drones and flight practice areas. More than 2,500 teachers are promised to be trained to teach this new subject, how to operate a drone. Well, considering how many drones is being used in the modern war in Ukraine, I'm not surprised they actually need people who know how to operate them in a really skillful way. There is another new subject in the school system. It's called Foundations of Security and Homeland Defense. which basically is going to be a replacement for Fundamentals of Life Safety, or ОБЖ in Russian. This change of subjects was announced last year when it was reported that the curriculum was being developed with an input from the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Emergency Situations. Foundations of Security and Homeland Defense will be studied from grades 5 to 11. About a year ago, they've published a document with the educational standards for the subject, and they stated that for the grades 10 and 11, so basically high school, the program is going to reflect in the formation of knowledge in elements of basic military training, mastery of safety requirements when handling firearms. This document also noted that the new standards imply the formation of understanding of modern combined arms combat, comprehension of possibility of applying modern scientific and technological achievements in the conditions of modern warfare, including methods of combat use of drones. Also, in the 2024-2025 academic year, the literature curriculum for grades 5 to 11 will change. The Ministry of Education proposed updating is due to the changed geopolitical situation, as he said. As a result, quite a lot of books are going to get banned. For example, Harry Potter series, British authors Diana Wynne-Jones, The House with a Character, some works of Russian and foreign prose writers from the second half of the 20th century and early 21st century. They all will be removed from the list of studied works. Additionally, to those authors who got banned, some other works by Russian authors will be also excluded from the program, such as those by authors like Bulat Akudjava, Vladimir Vysotsky, Evgeny Yevtushenko. However, one Z writer with whom I actually share a name, Zakhar Prilepin, he has been added to curriculum because he's been writing those crazy novels and poems about basically justifying the war against Ukraine, and for this he got added to the school curriculum. So basically now every school kid in Russia is gonna know the name of the most famous Z writer. This semi-patriotic updates, as in the previous 2 years, will also affect history lessons. The Ministry of Education suggests that teachers and students pay special attention to the list titled Our Heroes, published on the United Content of General Education portal. This list includes government officials, scientists, military figures, including participants in the war against Ukraine. It's funny because next to Yuri Gagarin, there will be like names of war criminals and participants in Donbass war, like Motorola, and they basically compare the achievements of Yuri Gagarin or other prominent Soviet people to just basically war criminals who fight against Ukraine nowadays. And it's funny how they actually included in this list of our heroes a daughter of philosopher and the ideologist of Russian world, Alexander Dugin, and they've included his daughter, Daria Dugina, who has been assassinated inside of Russia. And she literally has done nothing except that she was a daughter of her father. And of course, high schoolers, they transitioned to a new unified history textbook, which I actually made a video about. Since Russia is trying to isolate from the West and make its own people not to leave, to avoid the brainwash and everything, they are trying to push studying the foreign languages kind of in the back. For example, the deputy chairman of the State Duma, which is a lower bracket of the parliament, Pyotr Tolstoy, he said this during the summer. The question is, which languages do we really need in the current situation? Maybe birdhouses are even more important than languages. I'll tell you, if the Russian government partially didn't teach me English, I wouldn't be able to leave Russia. So in some way he's right, yeah. If you want to keep your children and your people just basically like in North Korea, chained up, not being able to leave or travel or do whatever they want, you don't want them to study any languages, sure. There are also changes in the Unified State Exam, or so-called ЕГЭ, basically an analog of American SAT. If you pass ЕГЭ, or Russian SAT, on a high score, which I did, for example, you have the ability to study in university for free. And they have some kind of funny changes. For example, if you use foreign words that have common equivalent in Russian while writing an essay, the points will be deducted. Moreover, if you express any anti-government ideas or promote non-traditional values in your essay, your points also will be deducted. Significant changes have also been made to the ЕГЭ for literature, so basically students will no longer need to read works by dissident Russian writers such as Varlam Shalamov, Vasily Aksionov, modern authors like Evgeny Grishkovich, Vladimir Makanin, and Viktor Pelemin, as well as poets who at various times criticized the Russian government. All of them have been removed from the required reading list for Unified Exam for Literature. Also, works of the 20th century foreign literature by authors like George Orwell, Franz Kafka, and Aldous Huxley have also been removed. Some changes also have taken the subject of history in this unified exam or ЕГЭ, and what's interesting that the questions about the war in Ukraine reappeared again. And they were in the previous year, and there was a lot of dissatisfaction with those questions. But now it's even more funny because, for example, in this task number 14, where students are asked to match geographic locations with historical events and dates, there is a city of Kherson is included. An 11th grade student is expected to answer that the city became part of the Russian Federation in the 20s, which is kind of funny considering the fact that, well, yeah, Russia included Kherson region in its territory and they had this so-called referendum, but the capital of that region is not under the control of Russia nowadays. Basically, you have to answer a question in a wrong way to get a right answer. Or here in the question number 5, which requires to match historical events with their participants alongside figures like Zoya Kosmodemyanska, who is a hero of the Second World War on the Soviet side, Peter I, Peter III, Catherine II, and Ivan Koζedub, appears the name of Vladimir Zhoga, commander of the freaking Sparta battalion in the Donetsk People's Republic, who died in the war in March 2022. So basically, if you're a history student and if you want to pass 100% on a history subject exam, you have to know names of some kind of no-name freaking commanders of small battalions of a special military operation. Another big change is students will no longer be allowed to use any mobile phones during lessons, even for educational purposes. And in a way, this might sound good, but often a phone is the only source of protection for children against abuse from teachers. I've personally seen dozens of videos recorded by students where teachers were mocking, yelling at, or hitting students, and only by chance did parents see those videos, which revealed what was actually happening in the classroom. Another interesting thing, that Russian language teachers are advised to use the communicative focus of the subject to awaken and develop civic patriotic feelings in students, such as love for the motherland, respect for the defenders of the homeland, a sense of duty, honor, and dignity. Here's what the guidelines say. Patriotic education is also carried out through vocabulary work conducted by the teacher with the aim of forming such important concepts for students as motherland, fatherland, patriot, citizen, devotion, loyalty, duty, heroism, defender, labor, service, creation, and others. Those guidelines also recommend to write essays on topics of civic responsibility and patriotism, such as where does the motherland begin, I am proud of my country, what does it mean to be a patriot, and how can love for one fatherland be expressed. Basically, Russian schools are becoming more and more propaganda machines, just brainwashing kids. Well, it's basically just getting worse and worse. So yeah, that was me, Zach the Russian. Thank you for watching the video. There is a Patreon page if you're interested in supporting the channel. Also, don't forget to support Ukraine, and see you in the next videos. Bye bye.